So today, I play music until usually I play music for like 10 minutes and then I'll come and then say hello to people and then tell people what we're talking about. But it just so happened that you came in right after the 10 minutes. So today we're going to be talking about, of course, the Tyre Nichols situation. You're not going to go in details because you are running for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. I do want to say this before we start. Throughout this Twitter space, I want to promote your website, JudgeJoeBrown2023.com. If people could go there and sign up to the mailing list, also donate as well. He also has a Cash App, $ Judge Joe Brown 2023. So you could, type that in your Cash App and donate while you're sitting here watching and listening to the Twitter space. So website is JudgeJoeBrown2023.com. No, I'm sorry. The website is jjb2023.com. So the website is jjb2023.com. So go to the website and sign up to the mailing list. And you can also donate Cash App, $ Judge Joe Brown 2023. That's right? Let me check.
Right,
yes.
That is right.
Okay. Yeah. So Cash App, Judge Joe Brown 2023. Go to the website, jjb2023.com. So you guys can do that while you are listening to the Twitter space. So let's start because I put in the Twitter space reminder, justice for Tyre Nichols or the people. So we talked about this earlier. You're gonna talk about it from a different angle. And I also want to talk about Jason Whitlock and his comments. So that'll be down the line. And it's something else I want to bring up as something last year that was reported, Chinese police stations in the United States. So that could be later as well. So, hi, Judge. Where do you want to start?
You pick it.
All right, so let's start with Tyre Nichols. Justice for Tyre Nichols or the people. First of all, we all saw the video. Horrible. And they should be under the jail. Also, everybody should be fired. The EMTs, the canine department, the canine dogs, the sheriff, the 2 sheriff patrol. And I definitely am calling for the chief of police to step down, especially given her track record. But everybody handled this. It was horrible. And his family should sue the city, county, and state. Everybody needs to be sued. The hospital, the EMT company need to be sued, and a whole lot of people need to be fired.
Why do they need to be sued? And let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
In Memphis, we've had 649 people who've been murdered in the last 24 and a half months. So why single this one out? What about the rest of them?
Well, were they murdered like this intentionally? Because this was something.
There are some police-involved homicides as well.
This should be fired as well.
Well, don't you think you need to make a determination as to what's going on so you can determine what criminal charges, if any, should be brought first?
Criminal charges of what? Murder, second-degree murder?
Yes.
Okay.
Depending upon what the circumstances are, don't you want to find out if there's any culpability for others who might be associated? Do you ask questions about why in 50 years is this the fastest indictment that has ever been returned in the city? Why is it that arrest warrants weren't issued for us so the full proceedings could have been evoked? Why is it that a lot of people that live in this area who have lost loved ones get no cooperation allegedly from the police, none from the sheriff's department, but this matter was so expedited? Why do we have the mayor and the chief talking as though they were trying to incite a riot or insurrection. What's going on here? What do we have about command authority? Who was supervising? Who was in charge? What's the training? What kind of operating environment was in place here? Why was this the first chief of police hired in 41 years in Memphis, when before the department was commanded by a director who could be removed at the whim of the mayor so that political control could be kept? Why is this the first time in 41 years when somebody was put in who is civil service as a chief who cannot be removed except for good cause? Why do we have that? Why do we bring somebody in with the particular background of this chief? Were there any local options? Why, again, do we have a chief instead of a director? Who is responsible for this? Who should be answerable? Is anybody being saved from embarrassment? Are there any patterns in this area? We saw some things on the video that we've seen. 3 out of the 4 that have been released would basically have said nothing, but there is one in there that was taken remotely from one of the pole setups they have in Memphis. They're movable, and that's what did everybody in, but they have a blue light flashing on them. So why are the officers unaware of that? You didn't see escalation 0 to 60. You saw 60. What provoked that? What happened beforehand? Are there questions that might have been answered? Was there anything else involved? Typically, as you find when you get this kind of police involvement with citizenry and what appears to be criminal activity on behalf of the police, was there money involved, drugs involved, prior animosity between any officer or officers, plural, and the deceased? Was there any interaction in life between the deceased and any of the officers? Was there any girlfriend, boyfriend situation going on here? We have to ask these questions, and so far they're unanswered. And the thing that gets me as a criminal court judge is I'm looking at a matter that does not appear to escalate, but just from ground zero is going full blast, which, if there's any kind of prior connection, the indictment shouldn't have been, or the charges shouldn't have been for murder in the second degree, but murder in the first degree. There are a lot of things that need to be addressed, and I'm looking at potentially the mayor, the chief, city council, and others are trying to save face. I'm looking at the fact that just about all of the candidates for mayor, except me, have jumped on this bandwagon to see who can yell the loudest about anti-police rhetoric. But what is really going on here, and why does this look like an anomaly? And why do we have so few people involved in the process who have no experience with these things? We hear language where we see officers 23 or 24 up to 31 or 32, I think it's 32 and 24, who are speaking in street language as they're talking to each other. The behavior is disturbing. By the way, it's nowhere near the worst I've ever seen for such incidents. I grew up in what became South Central LA, and I personally witnessed worse, both by LAPD, and that had nothing to do with Rodney King. That was years before, and on the streets. And I'm looking back through my life experience, and I have questions that should have been answered in something a bit more intense, in detailed, in depth than a 2-week period from event to indictment, which is, whoa, that's way quick. So
Mhm.
what's going on here, and
So
what are
do
we
you think that
seeing
there's
about the chief's background and her involvement in Atlanta and in North Carolina with other matters of potentially similar nature, and her reported involvement on commanding in Atlanta the SWAT team, the equestrian team, the motorcycle team, the Red Dog team, which was really something, and the apparent lack of command authority that we are looking at here in Memphis with the Scorpion team, which, by the way, wasn't even a police idea and not hers. It predated her arriving in Memphis by 2 years. And it was at the request of the public. They requested this Scorpion team to cut down on car. Yeah,
oh
it wasn't the police. Citizens were making a demand. They wanted something done about the massive carjacking rate, which Memphis is one of the worst in the country. The massive uh, situations with drag racing on the public streets and burning donuts in intersections, and reckless driving, which seems
so why is Ben Crump on these press tours? That was the first thing he said, and other people are following. Get rid of the Scorpion unit. It's no good. And it was the public.
the public
Taxpayers are
demanded
not
it. The taxpayers asked
right.
for it in the Black community because of the crime rate in the Black community. So this was responsive to the citizens. Now, it didn't have any problems until sometimes after the current chief got here, which in my experience, this sort of kind of indicates a lack of accountability in the command structure and a lack of training and control. And that is, it's like you walk in a restaurant that you were used to being treated well in, and all of a sudden the service goes to the devil. You start looking at management. What's going wrong here? There are a lot of questions. And we have another.
Let me ask you
One
this.
more thing.
Now,
One more thing. In Memphis, over the last 50 years, every time somebody is trying to get away with something, you seem to have a convenient uproar to distract attention, whether it's adult entertainment, whether it's some kind of particular designer crime at the moment. And what I've learned is you need to start looking around behind the desk and behind the doors and in the corners in Memphis to see what else is afoot.
And I see you, Sir Major, and anybody else that want to request to come up, just give us just another 5 minutes. And for this topic, people can start requesting on this topic to come up and speak. But I want to ask you, do you think there are steps being overlooked?
Yes. And I know one thing.
Because you think, is it for a cover-up of other things that probably was going on?
Maybe, or command ineptitude and a needed explanation for why you overlooked a lot of, if you wanted a female chief, there are quite a number of outstanding female command level officers, female in Memphis, that could have been considered. And then the other one is why, as a mayor and a city council, do you want a chief who you can't touch, who is immune from the people? And why would you remove the people's ability to control their police? I don't get it. And well, I do get it, but I'm not going to comment on it right now. Let's see how it develops in the fullness of time. Right, yeah. So, one other thing. Two other things. Two of these police defendants have defense counsel that I have seen developed. I mentored at least one of them at one stage in his career. And they are kick-ass, take no prisoner defense, no prisoners, defense lawyers. And although it won't be Ben Crump unless he just sort of sits as an aide to the district attorney's office, and maybe they'd get involved in a civil matter. I don't know. This isn't one of these walkovers. I've seen the defense lawyers in question many times put on trials in front of me, and it ain't going to be a lightweight thing. So everybody better be on getting their T's crossed and I's dotted. This is going to be interesting. Okay. And the final thing is, with these lawyers of this caliber involved, I cannot help but feel that a preliminary hearing might have been embarrassing for everybody involved when certain things were brought out that might be inconvenient. Now, we have a problem here in that if you indict somebody for, say, second-degree murder, that gives you voluntary manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide, reckless homicide, etc. But you can't go up. And I think there's a possibility from what is shaking out that there might be a murder first basis involved in this. And also, you notice Memphis did not have a strong reaction because essentially the streets aren't mad. I won't get into it because it's hearsay at this point, but the streets have an opinion that doesn't exactly mesh with the intensity of what you hear from the chief nor the mayor. So I'll just leave it at that for right now.
All right, let me bring up the first person. Everett, you requested first, but then you dropped down. Sir Major, hello.
Hello. Judge, how are you? It's the first time I get to interact with you on the stage. I come with a different perspective. I'm an activist, a high-profile one. You all can Google me, have my shortcomings, and still going through some mess with the government. However, I specialize in high-profile police brutality matters. I work very closely with Benjamin Crump. In fact, we're doing a case together now. There's so much to unpack here, starting with the chief. Danny, you said something that I supported, and that's the chief. The chief must resign at some point. I'm not saying necessarily today, but until I think we need to get everybody arrested first and everyone charged first, and then the chief is going to have to step down. I think I'm almost confident she's going to resign. Either she's going to resign or be forced out of a job. Okay, this is a chief who was a major in Atlanta police, who oversaw the Red Dog unit, who knew that the Red Dog unit was strip searching black men butt naked, fully butt naked on the side of the road, doing cavity searches on women. These officers were beating up people. I'm talking violently beating up people and getting away with it. She knew about it, did nothing to stop it. Several of my attorney friends, Chris Stewart and Dan Grossman, were attorneys, and Mark Bullman that worked on those cases. When she was a major, she had knowledge that there was an investigation going on where a sergeant at the time, whose husband had 50 different images of child porn in his phone. She stopped that investigation and told those investigators to cut the investigation. They followed her request. However, they went back and let the FBI know, and there was a case there. She was demoted to the rank of a lieutenant. There was deception. There was a whole investigation. There was deception detected, and she lost her job. She got fired. She then fought for her job, got her job back, worked her way back up to the ranks, and became assistant chief. Once she became assistant chief, she subsequently left the city of Atlanta, went to Durham to become the chief out there. And if any of you all know, and you guys hang out in my spaces, you know about the NOBLE, which stands for the National Organization for Black Law Enforcement Executives. I've gone to NOBLE conventions. NOBLE backed this chief into getting her chief of police job out there in Durham. She was supposed to help reduce crime. She was supposed to suppress crime. She was supposed to get guns out the street, get some of these murders brought down. She didn't do a good job out there. In fact, she quit. And she went to the next best thing, smoking. to a bigger market, a bigger city with a bigger department with bigger issues. She goes out there to Memphis. And in Memphis, I think she got there in 2021, if my memory serves me correct. Noble also helped her get that. And her ties to being a sorority, a part of a sorority, though that institution also backed her in getting her job. Okay. Now here's the problem. The Red Dog unit that Judge talked about was disbanded in Atlanta for all their violent, unconstitutional behaviors. This Chief C.J. Davis created a replica unit that did the same exact thing to get disbanded in Atlanta. Okay, so whether the community wanted that or not, here's my argument. She knew or should have known that the Scorpion team was out doing the same crap. What she knew or should have known, she should have known every officer that was on that team. Because this, at the end of the day, regardless of what they do, it's going to fall back on her shoulders. Okay? And all her dirty laundry is going to come out in the wash. She should know that as a respected chief by some. But as an experienced law enforcement executive, she should have known that. The one officer is no stranger to controversy. He was accused of beating up an inmate where there was a whole litigation behind that. And so at this point in time, she's going to have to resign. She must resign. Now, I'm conflicted because as an activist, Judge, we look for the best chiefs to do the right thing even when no one's looking. What she did do that I do commend her on was that she wasted no time, Judge, on holding these officers accountable. Notice we didn't see a union, a police union coming out, getting in the way. We didn't see, that's only 30 seconds of a video. We didn't hear, we're going to investigate ourselves and we found no wrong. She did the right thing by arresting these guys, charging them, and putting them in jail. Here's why, but and regardless of why she did it, Judge, it really doesn't matter at this point. But I think majority of the reason why she did it is because she knew that city of Memphis was going to get tore up, and then there would be the trickle-down effect in other cities. But then most importantly, her dirty laundry would air out. So at the end of the day, she did the right thing. I think she ultimately at some point needs to resign. But I'll throw this in there.
I have a question.
Let me point something out legally in Memphis. Under the circumstances here, she is a civil service chief. They would have to find justifiable cause to terminate her. She's safe. She's just like anybody else under civil service. You can't get rid of her just because you don't like her. Next thing, she didn't bring the charges. Nobody got an arrest warrant. What happened is the new district attorney, who's a Democrat, his name is Mulroy. He's a white guy who has connections, not bad ones, but he's not exactly an experienced criminal attorney, but he's the DA, and he's the first Democrat in decades to hold the position in Memphis. He got the indictments for second-degree murder returned. Now, the problem is that there really was very, very little likelihood of Memphis, Tennessee erupting in a riot or street violence. It just doesn't do that here. There is a cadre of about 45 to 50 people, maybe 100, that you can count on going down to the old bridge across the Mississippi and closing it down. And they kind of get indulged since half a mile away, there's another new bridge where most people traffic anyway. Now, what I heard, being personally a creature of the 60s, being able to vote and buy whiskey before the 60s were out, is what was usually said and done in the 60s by the militant crowd when they were trying to provoke a riot, to incite one. And I heard that language. And I think that was totally inappropriate for a chief to do that. Let's just say what I heard of itself, separate and apart. See, we have two issues here. We have what happened with the officers. We have, well, several issues. Next one is, was this in line with police work? Was this police activity commensurate with Red Dog Unit, or what people might have said about Scorpion Unit? Or was it just what I have run into over the last 50 years, which is on rare occasion, certain individuals acting out of their own interest take advantage of their cop status rather than doing something that is just random. Anybody is subject to what they do. And the other point is that when this woman came in, this unit had been in operation for 2 full years. This is the 3rd year of its operation and her first basically full year in her position. The first thing that she did that got brought to the public's attention was she wanted to go to a restaurant. She's the chief of police. She says her gun got stolen because she didn't want to take the gun into the restaurant and she left it in the car. And we have had a rash of armed robberies in restaurants. So you're the chief of police. You don't arm yourself. Nobody's going to question you about being armed. You're chief law enforcement in the county. You're exempt, but you leave your gun in the car where it is stolen, along with other break-ins. I think so far this last few months, we've had 2,500 going on 3,000 break-ins, and the break-ins are specifically to burglarize cars because they know people don't take the guns into these restaurants and they don't put them in the trunk and bullseye the vehicle by letting somebody see. They put them in the glove compartment. So they break the window on the passenger side, jimmy the glove compartments and the center consoles and take a look, and they sometimes leave cash money and jewelry on the floor to get the guns.
I have a question.
That's what's going on here?
I have a question. Then I'm gonna let you have the last word, Sir Major, and you can stay up here if you like. And then I'm gonna go to KD, Stephanie, and I'm gonna bring up Mia. Where is the demand for her to resign? And maybe that is a question, but you kind of answered it, Judge, and you can let me know if I'm right or wrong. Maybe her remarks, not saying that she was citing a riot, but those particular remarks that probably could have, maybe that's why she said what she said, so that the focus could be off of her lack of doing, so that there won't be a cry for her to also resign. And her and others, do you think they are more concerned with having a position of power than actually doing a proficient job? I hope I said that right.
I'll make this direct accusation, and it has nothing to do with this case per se. But there is a massive amount of official corruption going on in Memphis, and always, well, with hiatus under
what happened, Judge? I think somebody tried to call him.
And
I hate when that happens.
Under A.C. Wharton, who was the next to last mayor. Incidentally, Doc was sometimes client and a friend of mine, and A.C. Wharton and I used to practice law together 30-some years ago. The city has had a long history, a mass history of corruption. And there are billions of dollars on the table to be made under the table. And we've got a mayor's race with so far 15 individuals being indicated as interested, and just about all of them are on the table with this except me. And it's find it interesting, since even though it looks like I'm winning at this point, I'm the only one that's not even discussed in the newspapers, because this corruption needs to change. And I'm looking at this as a good opportunity for this cabal to cover their tracks. but we need to look deeper. There is, as you said, young man, a need to look at the chief in terms of, one, why was she hired? Two, why was she given a civil service position for the first time in more than 40 years instead of a at-will appointment position? Why did so many local women who were well qualified get overlooked? So why do you bring in a rookie to a city? Actually, Memphis is larger than Atlanta. Why do you bring in somebody to a bigger city who couldn't handle a smaller one? You see, these are questions.
Maybe she's sucking somebody's dick. And that's just me being brass. So, Reggie, you have the last word.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I don't know if she's doing that, but what I will say is that she does have some backing. She has backing from organizations. And you got to look at when she came in. She came in at a time where, many in law enforcement don't want the job anymore. People are quitting around the United States because of, the whole defund the police, Black Lives Matter, police out here, shooting and killing unarmed Black folks. And so she came in at a great time. She came in with some backing. And I think that the chief or the mayor out there was willing to overlook, the Atlanta stuff. I mean, but you got to look at the last job. What did she do out there in Durham? She didn't even finish the job. She wasn't able to do what they hired her to do. And then for her to think that she can leave Atlanta, which was a great market, leave Atlanta, go to another market, become chief, and then she's just trying to fill her career. She's trying to get the pensions, whatever she can get. I think she needs to be fired. For the other purpose, here's the other component. The other component is that she was not fully forthcoming nor honest. She was not honest about the white officer who many of us had to locate. She was not honest about his identity. She didn't put him a part of the lineup. And she, as of today, this was as of today, he has been relieved of duty. This wasn't last week, it was today. And so there's some trust issues that I have, and I don't even live in Memphis, so I can only imagine what folks in Memphis are thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I want to bring KD, then I'm gonna go to Brandy, then Mia.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
Hey. Thanks for having me on. First thing first, I want to say, Judge Joe brought up a bunch of great questions at the beginning of this broadcast that I feel those are the important questions that needs to be answered first before we start jumping to conclusions and going off the way we did. Particularly those of us that live outside of Memphis or outside of the state of Tennessee. In addition to those questions that the judge asked, I want to throw in this. I'm retired military. I worked in government for over 23 years, worked all across this country, across the world. When the media puts out certain videos, they put them out with a purpose, okay? And trust me when I tell you, nothing is put out that's not meant to be put out, unless it's leaked. But 99% of the time, it's put out with a purpose. Our people tend to react different when it comes to police murdering us than when it's our own murdering us. The thing I want to point out is our reaction when we found out that this young man, and God rest his soul, his life was taken by these police officers. But we still reacted as if we like the other situations of the past, like when there's a white police officer. But this one was totally different because there was prompt action. These police officers, they were taken off the streets. It's like they're being held accountable. I think our judgment and our reaction should be to wait to see the outcome, because that's what we're always pissed off about. This guy got away with this, or this police officer got away with that. Oh, prompt action was taken against these police officers. So let's wait. Let's see the outcome. And most importantly, let's get those questions answered, those hard questions answered before we reserve judgment. And for those of us that don't reside in the city of Memphis or don't live in the state of Tennessee or have never lived in the city of Memphis, we don't have any place or any business calling for the resignation of anybody in that town, because
why not?
we don't know them. Their people elected them. The people of that city elected them, not us. If we don't live in that city, you don't have any business to call for the resignation of anybody, because one, you don't know the story. Two, you did not elect them or you did not support them. That is not your town. Leave that up to the residents of that town to call for the resignation, because it's more genuine that way.
Real quick though, because I'm from
Now,
New Jersey. Wait, let me just say this. Let me just say this.
I live there.
Let me just say this real quick. I'm from New Jersey. We don't elect our sheriffs or police chief. They're appointed. So a lot of times when you have people nationwide, such as myself, that is requesting for them to step down, you're right. They probably did vote her in, but I come from a place where we don't vote these people in. So yeah, she should resign. So that's my thinking of it. But go ahead, Judge.
I live here. I have questions. Now, in my past, being a criminal court judge, before I did that 15-year on the show, I got elected to 2 8-year terms as a criminal court judge. I was a criminal defense lawyer. I was chief public defender for the city and ran the public defender's office. I was the first Black they ever hired for the city prosecutor's office. I did EEOC and poverty law. I can walk through any community in this town and people will come up to me and want to take pictures. I don't need a bodyguard. Everybody else does. Now, that said, over the years, I lost a law partner to a mess where they had 45 federally indicted folk that range from federal agents to local police agents, detectives, ordinary folk on a drug ring, and he got murdered. And everybody but the 2 clients I wound up with out of the 45 had their cases abated by death. It got real exciting. And I've had situations where there were love relationships between a cop and one of the deceased, or several cops and one of the deceased. I've had situations where it involved several police and drug interactions between citizenry and the police. So what you see sometimes is not just generic police wrongdoing, racist and everything else, but just somebody taking advantage of the thing that they have at their beck and call as a cop to do stuff that's just criminal. I've also run into rank racism, and I was called in to investigate the Shannon Street massacre, as it's known here in Memphis, where it was just a police outright execution of not one, but 6 Black suspects. Just put them on the floor, head, foot, and shoot them from the doorways of the room where they were while they're down on the floor type execution. I've seen it all. And what I'm saying is we have a new context. We have a Black sheriff for the first time. We've got a Black female chief of police, which is by no means the first director or head person in the police department. We've got 60% of the criminal court judges are Black, 60% are Black. Also, 60% of the judges they have are female. We have a majority of the police department is Black, a great percentage of youthful Black under 35. The majority of the jury
Katie, I need you to mute.
The majority of the jury pool are Black. So we have lots and lots of
Everything
black
is
lawyers.
majority black vote.
Yeah, so only 19.1% of the registered voters in the town are black, are white rather. So what is this lack of confidence on the system being able to work? But again, my most uncomfortable thing is listening to the mayor, Strickland, who's white. They call him Poppin' Fresh Doughboy. That's his nickname amongst the white people, by the way. And the chief, and both of them appear to me, with my 60s mind's eye, to be trying to incite a riot. That bothers me.
I want to go to Brandy, Mia, then E-Rich, and then I'll let everyone have their last remarks before we move on to the next topic. All right, so Brandy. Oh, and by the way, let me just reset the room real quick. Welcome, everybody. I want everybody to support Judge Joe Brown for mayor. Go to his website and sign up, jjb2023.com. You can also donate. If it's easier to donate to Cash App, that would be $ Judge Joe Brown 2023. Go ahead, Brandy.
Hi. Okay, so something about this whole situation that kind of disturbed me a little bit. So I don't really know the exact timeline, but it really did bother me because it did seem like that there was so much swift justice with this case versus the non-Black cases, the officers that were non-Black. So I definitely had issue with that. But I try to keep an open mind about things, like not try to rush the judgment, on it. But that really disturbed me, that I felt, well, why is this one, everything is happening so quickly? But the other thing that I'm kind of noticing, not so much as a trend per se, but do you guys remember that case in Dallas with the white police officer that went into the wrong apartment and killed that Black guy, both named Jean, I believe that was his name.
Yes.
And I'm starting to see, back then, I'm not sure now, I'm from Dallas and I haven't lived there in some years, but during that time, the police chief was Black, the district attorney was Black. And so everybody just knew without a shadow of a doubt there was going to be some justice served. And that girl got like 2 years for killing him. Now, I know that you have to meet certain elements or whatever to get, I don't know, certain punishments and sentences and whatever. So whatever happened, I think the people were very much disappointed. And I'm starting to think, is there some type of correlation between all of these horrible things happening and then they go and put all of these Black people into these power positions? Is it to say, see, this system isn't rigged. Look at the police chief. Look at the district attorney, or, whoever else is in those positions. Just wanted to see what your thoughts were about that.
What do you think?
Like I said, this is the second case, so I don't really want to call it a trend just yet, but I'm just starting to think that there is something more sinister going afoot. Like you're being elected or however you guys do things in Memphis and how they did
Everybody's elected except the chief of police. She's appointed, and usually the appointed director of police is subject to the mayor's whim, but the chief of police is civil service. You can't touch her ever until she resigns or commits some malfeasance that isn't just a judgment call, but is actual wrongdoing.
Right. So I'm just thinking that maybe they set these ladies up with a certain intention, not just for them to have all this power play, maybe something to make them feel that they have some type of authority, but they're actually carrying out, I don't know, someone else's dirty work and they just can't see it.
Okay, and I'll put another one out there. What if there was something very peculiar about this case, with the connection of somebody on one level being something that reaches all the way to, say, DC, that resulted in this case being treated much differently than anything else that you've seen? Did anybody notice the concerted response nationally to this incident where everybody was acting like, talking like they wanted there to be a riot in Memphis?
Yeah, I can definitely say
Okay,
that.
now what if there were a connection?
That might be the one thing to totally set things off.
No. What if there was a connection to explain the special treatment this case got?
Okay.
And if you check the net, I'm not getting into it because I consider it hearsay at this point.
Okay.
But there are some interesting explanations that, since we are all off in hearsay at this point, since nothing has gone to trial, might be looked to explain what happened. Now, let's supposing that there was an existing animus between parties involved with this, and somebody took advantage of a police situation, so it wasn't just a random citizen that stopped on the street. It was somebody that had prior hostilities with, say, one of the cops. What if it was somebody doing business with one of the cops that resulted in a situation? Now, these things have come up in the past that I've had to deal with in my career over the last half century, and nobody seems aware of them locally. Well, some people, the streets are, but the officials act like they've never heard of them. And maybe that's because they have such little experience with such things. So, why don't we have people in place who actually have the experience and the acumen to deal with such situations? That is a big question.
Okay. But any more questions, Brandy? Because I'm gonna move on to Mia.
Oh
And
no,
then-
go ahead, move on. Thank you.
All right. Mia.
Hey, what's up? Hi Dana. Hi Judge Joe
Hi.
Brown. I'm not originally from Memphis, but I do say that I am originally from Memphis because I spent my formative years there by way of California. I moved there in '88. So I gotta say, like, it's odd what has happened. I call back home and nobody wants to talk about it. I know, Judge, you were talking about, how the streets are feeling. Like, they're just not talking about it. I find it strange. I have to dig and poke at them to get information of how they feel. But I know that she needs to resign. I know the young man KD said that leave it up to the people that live there or have some sort of invested in, investments there. Well, I'm one of them, and I want her to go. If you don't mind, I'd like to post something to the Jumbotron, but I wanted to ask for permission first.
Yeah, go
Go,
ahead. I don't care if anybody does that. Mhm.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want you to look in the Jumbotron, and you'll notice a video of probably some young men. The biggest issue in Memphis is that any child between the ages of 15 years old, up to 26. That's the biggest issue that I've been noticing. They'll get in these infinities. They will run you off the road. If you see an infinity, like, just go ahead and move. Like, that's the ambulance coming through. Just go ahead and take the side of the road. This is what they did to one of the highways in Memphis during her term. Where was she? Nowhere to be found on that. Nowhere to be found. Oh, and might I add, there's a serial killer going around in, I want to say, Westwood area on up and down. Judge, you know where I'm talking about. Why wasn't she
I
worried
do.
about that? Why is she talking about
That's
that? That's
a
not
good
even getting any.
question.
You see what I'm saying? Like, she didn't even. My sister said they're even hiding it.
I'm well aware of.
Yeah.
I'm well aware of all of these things. It's like, what's going on here, and why does this look like it was a stupid thing that happened? But it looks like a bunch of vultures jumping on it to accomplish something else other than bring somebody to justice.
Exactly. And that is why she needs to be looked into more. That is why whoever vetted her needs to be looked into more. And that is why if you run, I've invited my entire, I've sent the message out that you're running. I'm always talking about you. I'm always, so I just hope that you get the streets cleaned up because that's my home. I own property there. Man, just we need it. We need all these people out of there. They got to fucking go.
Yes, the thing with the criminal courts is the criminal courts in Memphis are very efficient. We got rid of what was known as one of the most corrupt prosecutors in America, Amy Wyrick, and we have the first Democratic prosecutor in generations, decades here, not generations. That's what they always used to be before the 1960s was Democrats. But we have 60% of the judges that handle criminal matters are Black, and 60% of those are female. 60% of the judges are female. One of them I can think of is white. And 60% of the judges in total are Black. We have basically on the higher levels, we've got 50% Black female, we've got 10% Black male, and 40% of the judges of that 30% are white male and 10% are white female. So it's pretty eclectic. We've got good defense lawyers who can mount a decent trial for the most part. They aren't all Black. And it's interesting that nobody wants to rely on a construct that the people had a great deal of influence in setting up.
It sounds like nobody's not doing their job like they're supposed to. I'm gonna go to E. Rich and swing it back to Sir Major. I think he had his hand up.
His hand was up before mine. I don't have too much to add.
No, he already spoke, but I was gonna let him speak again before we move on to the next topic. But you didn't speak yet, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted. Well, I put my hand back down because I was thinking about dropping back down to listener. Is it really 50% female? I mean, those numbers on female judges is
60% of the judges are female.
Wow, that's incredible. And hi, Judge. Good to see you again, Dana. Also good to see you. I've been watching this closely, Judge. Well, one other, I guess, question I would have is, if you're elected mayor, what would your response be, or how would you be proactive to prevent the next this?
Well, okay. One thing is I have a proposal. It's very long and detailed. I've been working on it for quite a few years. And I would restructure the police department so it is not a thing where you have civilian review, but it is in fact a civilian run and controlled department. The Department of Defense has a civilian commander-in-chief, the president. The Secretary of Defense, who is the next senior officer involved, is a civilian. You have a Secretary of the Army, Navy, Air Force, etc. They're all civilians. And then you have subsecretaries over various departments, all civilian. So the police department, on the other hand, has civil service, uniform, sworn operatives who control everything right now. That's got to change. So you have civilian director or commissioner. You have sub-directors over homicide, uniform patrol, sex crimes, traffic, burglary, you name it. And the day-to-day operation of the police department would be under the control of the civilian population, and some other things going along with that too. So that would be something that you would have to put in place, and under Tennessee law, you could. We could recruit the community to do something more effective than just neighborhood watch. You can establish communications. You can enlist juveniles so that they become part of the process of order rather than straying over the line to becoming thugs. You can do things about vocational training, rehabilitation, academic instruction, and rehabilitation. You can bring jobs in here, and nobody around this place wants to do it. So if you've got an essentially unemployed population, you have a problem. In Memphis, we have part of the city has one of the highest per capita incomes in the United States, and another segment, white, black, brown, and red and yellow, has one of the lowest. And for a reason that I know, and most of the people that live here know, nobody in between gets any daylight. The middle class is totally neglected. The school system is totally neglected. And people who are in charge just have ingenious ways of getting the public dollars put into a little chump change drawer for them, and a lot of it into the people that own them. Now, if I can make a suggestion, if you want to see what's going on in Memphis and where you live, there is an app. Write this down. It's called followthemoney.org. It's just like it sounds, followthemoney.org. And you can enter in there a person's name and where they're located and what office they have. And if they have a long track record, it will give you a detailed rundown based on the reports to the state election commissions in question on who's paid what in the time period involved to who. And you can see certain people, when you track down what they've gotten a lot. One person I can think of, one of my opponents, has gotten $370,000 in the last few years from certain entities that you would construe as enemies of the people. Another great, elegant lady, Dr. Barbara Cooper, who passed this year after an accident. She was in her 90s. She was still in the state legislature and an effective member. She, on the other hand, over a 30-year period, got less than $750 from the same suspect entities, and it's obvious she stopped taking money from them quite a while ago, and she had seniority on a whole lot of committees, and that doctor in front certainly didn't hurt her ability to work within a legislative body. So why has one got $370,000 in a handful of years and another one got $750? You see, you look at these things and let's say a picture starts coming into focus.
All right. Rich, did you want to conclude, and then I want to go to Sir Major and then swing to a different topic?
I had a follow up, but I think at the moment passed. I did pin that link to the Nest Judge, the followthemoney.org, and I can take it down, Dana. I think I can't remember it as part of the problem. I'm sorry, but I appreciate your response, and I know this is a difficult time. So thanks for letting me contribute to the conversation.
All right, thank you for contributing. It was very well put what you said, and you are thinking.
I try.
Sir Major, did you want to anybody? Sir Major,
yes,
anybody else?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much, Dan. I really love the space. Judge, you're phenomenal. I hate police unions. I just want to say that I do not like police unions. I believe they act as a obstructionist. They get in the way to the spirit of justice and the pursuit of justice. So hopefully we can get a grip on these police unions in America. But Judge, I want to get your thoughts on qualified immunity. I believe that we can get rid of police brutality overnight. Yes, I said it. Police brutality can tremendously curve overnight if we do the following. We have to first end qualified immunity. Second, we have to require our police officers, just with any other profession, as a lawyer, you're required to have general liability insurance. As a dentist, a doctor, you have to have insurance. So, Judge, I wanted to get your thoughts on qualified immunity and having officers carry insurance.
Okay. Technically, what happens is the officer technically is a servant. The rule would be under the old master servant theories. In other words, the master is responsible for the actions of his servants. In this case, the government, being the sovereign entity, is responsible for the actions of its officers unless the officer is acting inconsistent with his purposes. In which case, by the way, if you get too deep in that, you remove your deep pocket of the sovereign entity and it sticks with the individual officer. So technically, he doesn't have to be insured because his employer, the people, are insured. And if the people give permission to be sued, give themselves permission to sue themselves, then you have your deep pocket. Now, the qualified immunity, that has its ups and downs. And generally, what happens is if you are in fact acting consistently with your employment, you're okay. If you're stepping way outside of that employment, then you're not. For example, if you commit an action such as possession of drugs or narcotics, and you're part of a police sting operation, that's in line with your duties as a cop. That's what you're there for, to ferret out crime. And you're immune, not talking about the qualified immunity, but that's part of your job. But if you just happen to be a junkie, dope smoking cop because you decided to try crack and liked it, or crystal meth and you liked it, that's not part of your job. So when you get into the qualified immunity, that's what did you do? Was it arguably in line with your duties, or was it way outside of them? That comes into play a lot with judges. We've had a situation here where we have had, particularly down in our juvenile court thing, where we had a judge who was involved in converting his court without authority into a profit-making business entity with stockholders, would you believe? And one federal judge, who, by the way, I thought should have been the nominee for the Supreme Court vacancy, Judge Bernice Donald of the Sixth Circuit, she wrote an excellent opinion saying that the judge in question would no longer have any immunity if he did as alleged, because that would be way outside his duties, that no one could possibly construe would be the acts of a judicial officer. Now, if that gives an explanation, I'm sorry for being long-winded, but it's a real complicated subject and it provokes a lot of argument amongst those who have to resolve these things or argue these things now.
All right, so
Don't judge him, Joe Brown.